On the night of August 1st, 1980, the heat of Madrid spreads like a heavy blanket over the residential estate of Somosaguas on the western outskirts of the Spanish capital. It is a summer night like so many others, a quiet night in which the air barely stirs between the sprawling gardens and the tall gates of this residential enclave, where the cream of Spanish society resides. Somosaguas is a haven of privilege, a place where mansions hide behind stone walls and carefully trimmed hedges, where luxury cars rest in spacious garages, and where life flows with that discreet smoothness that only old money can buy. At number 27 on Camino Viejo de Jumera stands one of the most imposing properties in the estate. It is the villa of the Marquises of Urquijo, a mansion built on a plot of over 4,000 square meters, surrounded by gardens, with an indoor swimming pool, multiple bedrooms on the upper floor, spacious living rooms on the ground floor, and even a cinema room in the basement. The Marquises of Urquijo are not simply wealthy, they are an institution. Their name is linked to Banco Urquijo, one of the most important financial entities in Spanish history. That night, inside the mansion, the silence is almost absolute. The Marquises, Manuel de la Sierra, y Torres and his wife, Maria Lourdes de Urquijo y Morenés, the fifth Marquise of Urquijo, sleep in separate bedrooms upstairs. He is 54, she 45. The house is virtually empty. The domestic staff are not present that night, a circumstance that will acquire unsettling significance over time. The couple's children, Miriam and Juan, are not in the house. And at some point during that night, someone enters. Someone who knows the house, someone who knows where the bedrooms are, who knows the layout of the rooms. According to later reconstructions, the entry is made through the indoor swimming pool area, where a hole is cut in a door with a blowtorch to reach through and open it from the inside. This is not the work of a random intruder. This is something planned. What happens next inside those bedrooms will forever change Spain's criminal history. Manuel de la Sierra is shot while sleeping. The projectile is .22 caliber, fired from what investigators will determine to be a Star F Olympic pistol, a rare weapon of which barely 20 were manufactured. Maria Lourdes de Urquijo, apparently roused by the sound of the first shot, receives 2 more shots. They are fired at point-blank range, all with the cold precision of someone who does not hesitate. Before we continue, we would like to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Subscribing is completely free and helps us produce high-quality true crime documentaries like this one. Your support makes a real difference. Now, let us return to Somosaguas. On the morning of August 1st, it is the domestic staff who discover the scene. But what happens immediately afterward is perhaps as significant as the crime itself. Diego Martinez Herrera, the Marquise's estate manager, gives an extraordinary order. He has the bodies washed before the police arrive. Washing the bodies means eliminating potential DNA evidence, gunpowder residue, fibers, fingerprints. Martinez Herrera also destroys documents found in the Marquise's safe. What documents were they? What did they contain? These questions were never satisfactorily answered, and inexplicably, Martinez Herrera was never thoroughly investigated for these actions. Another detail. Before calling the police, someone calls the crime weekly El Caso. The press arrives before the investigators. A reporter finds a shell casing in a rubbish bin in the house. Spain awakens to news combining every element of the perfect thriller: murder, aristocracy, money, mystery. One must understand the context. Spain is in the midst of democratic transition. Franco had died just 5 years earlier. Democracy is young, fragile, and the Urquijo case becomes the perfect vehicle for a press, discovering unprecedented freedom. To understand the crime, one must know Rafael Escobedo Alday. Rafi, as everyone called him. Born in 1955 into a well-off Madrid family, a son of a respected lawyer, one of 6 brothers. A young man who had not completed his law degree, who did not work steadily, but who possessed a charisma, a personal charm that opened doors for him. When he met Miriam de la Sierra at the Somosaguas Riding Club, the connection was immediate. Manuel de la Sierra, Miriam's father, did not look favorably on his future son-in-law. He considered him immature, unsuitable for the daughter of one of Spain's most important families. But Miriam was determined, and on June 21, 1978, they married. The marriage did not work. In 1979, Miriam began a relationship with Richard Dennis Roux, an American known as Dick. For Rafi, it was a devastating blow. He blamed his in-laws for the breakdown. On July 28, 1980, 4 days before the murders, during a violent argument, Rafi hurled a threat at Miriam that would become prophetic. "You are going to remember me. I am going to destroy your parents." 4 days later, Miriam's parents were dead. The police investigation was marked from the outset by media pressure, political interference, and procedural errors. It was not until April 8, 1981, over 8 months after the murders, that Escobedo was arrested following the discovery of shell casings at his father's property. But those casings would mysteriously disappear before the trial. Then came the confession. Escobedo signed a statement admitting to killing the marquises. But his lawyer subsequently claimed the confession had been extracted under torture. It was the only time he admitted guilt. From that moment on, he always maintained he had not committed the crimes. However, he acknowledged having been in the mansion that night. According to his version, he had gone to the house with Javier Anastasio, and others were waiting there: estate manager Martinez Herrera and Mauricio Lopez Roberts, Marquis of Torrehermosa. Someone carried the weapon. If this version were true, the crime was not a solitary act, but a coordinated operation. The trial was one of the most closely followed judicial spectacles in Spanish history. The verdict was guilty. 53 years in prison for 2 murders, with premeditation and nocturnity. But the most striking aspect was a phrase the judge included. Escobedo had murdered his former in-laws, alone or in the company of others. Who were these others? Why were they neither identified nor tried? In 1983, the magazine Interview revealed that Lopez Roberts had purchased a rifle silencer 2 days before the crime. He proved the purchase was unrelated to the murder weapon, but defended Escobedo's innocence, declaring that Rafi was taking the fall for the real perpetrators. Javier Anastasio was arrested as a co-perpetrator, but in 1987 he fled Spain and remained a fugitive for decades. On June 17, 1988, Rafael Escobedo took his own life in his cell at El Dueso prison. He was 33 years old, 7 years behind bars, convicted of a crime whose authorship he always denied. His death closed a life, but left the case more open than ever. In 1990, Lopez Roberts was sentenced to 10 years as an accessory after the fact. Anastasio, after his flight, and they claimed the crime had been the work of a professional, and that behind it lay political and financial interests, far exceeding the family's fear. Escobedo's lawyer, Marcos Garcia Montes, called the case a national botch-up covered by the public authorities, in which very important people were implicated. The unanswered questions are numerous. Who actually pulled the trigger that night? What did the destroyed documents from the safe contain? Why were the bodies washed before the police arrived? Why was the domestic staff absent? Why was the murder weapon never found? Was there a financial motive linked to transformations at Banco Urquijo? The mansion still stands on Camino Viejo de Humera, its interior virtually unchanged since the night of the crime. Miriam de la Sierra once said she could never climb those stairs again, that the smell of blood etched into her memory would not allow it. Juan, who inherited the title, lived periodically in the family home until his death from cancer in 2022. His children recently put the house on the market for 3.2 million euros, significantly below what a property of those characteristics would fetch in the exclusive Somosaguas development. The stigma of the crime, over 4 decades later, continues to devalue the mansion. The Urquijo case belongs to that special category of crimes that transcend the judicial to become mirrors of the society that produces them. In transitional Spain, this double murder exposed the cracks beneath the surface of modernization. The power of money influencing judicial proceedings, social elites protecting one another, justice proving itself susceptible to manipulation. But the most unsettling thing is not what we know, but what we do not know. That dark territory between established facts, where certainties dissolve and questions multiply. Escobedo took his secrets to a premature grave. Lopez Roberts died without confessing what he knew. Martinez Herrera was never compelled to account for his actions. Anastasio offered his version decades later, without legal consequences. This silence is the true protagonist of this story. A silence that is not peace, but absence, not calm, but void, not resolution, but question. The silence of a truth that was known, but was not spoken, that was lived, but was not told, that was deliberately buried beneath layers of convenience, fear, and power. That silence is the legacy of the Urquijo case. And that silence, as long as it exists, keeps this case alive, restless, unresolved, like a wound that does not heal because no one has had the courage to clean it to the bottom. What really happened in the mansion of the marquises of Urquijo on the night of August 1st, 1980? After everything we have explored, the most honest answer we can offer is that we do not know with certainty. We know what the courts determined. We know what the accused said and unsaid. We know what the evidence, the little that survived destruction and negligence, suggests. But knowing and understanding are different things, and understanding and accepting are more different still. The silence of Somosaguas remains the last word of this case. And that silence, after more than 4 decades, continues to resonate with the same intensity as the very first day. A question waiting, patient and inexhaustible, for an answer that may never come.